There are a lot of ways we consume food, water, plants, animals. We consume luxury objects like tech gadgets and beauty products. Through our technology, there is an endless array of information. We read the news, do our research, and socialize. We consume entertainment by the hours, scrolling through endless catalogs of movies, videos, and songs. The average user spends about 6 hours a day on their devices. Meanwhile, an endless river of brand new content floods onto social media platforms. YouTube alone has 500 hours of video content uploaded to the site every minute. There is so much out there to consume, and people are hungry for it. Our lives are inundated with consumer products. Companies are spending billions of dollars finding new and creative ways to catch our attention. Trends have driven herds of people to buy the latest flagship of the hottest brands. Brand loyalty instigates flame wars in chat threads. Companies preach through their advertisements how necessary their product or service is in our lives. It is like we have become a society of purchasing for purchasing's sake. We are flooded with a deluge of addictive chemicals like sugar or alcohol, kept on a constant dopamine high through video games and constantly entertained through our computers. We have become complacent, uncaring, inattentive, and lethargic. We must ask ourselves, how much is too much? Have we become captivated by our constant companions, lulled ever deeper by the siren call of ease and access? Is our lavish lifestyle a sign of good times, or is it built on a house of cards? Economists today tell us it is good when people buy and sell, that more buying and selling is better. From their perspective, it makes sense. But what about on the other side of the coin? Is this voracious and ever-increasing need to buy healthy, safe, and sane? Consuming is perfectly natural. We need it to live, grow, and support one another. But we have taken it too far. It is time we took a step back and really looked at what is rotten in the core of our consumer society. When people think of consumerism today, they tend to think of large shops, massive malls, and online shopping. They're not wrong, but that is not the full picture. We first need to go back to what consumption truly means. Consumerism was a term coined by a professor of hydraulic engineering named Sidney A. Reeve in his book Modern Economic Tendencies. The word is a combination of consumer and the suffix ism. Consumer is the noun variant of the verb consume. To consume means to destroy or use something for the purpose of constructing something else. Every living thing is constantly consuming something. Plants consume nutrients from the soil, carbon dioxide and oxygen from the air, and photosynthesize sunlight to grow, seed, and reproduce. Microorganisms break down dead matter to replicate. Animals eat plants and other animals. Consumption is the mechanism from which things are built, grown, and maintained. Mankind is not excused from this fundamental law of nature. We grow crops and animals to put food on the table. We clear forests and mine deep into the earth's crust to build our homes, furniture, and transportation. We drink water from aquifers, rivers, lakes, or wells. Everything you own was taken from the environment around you, converted, and sold to you as a usable product. So if consumption is such a natural process, what makes it so bad? What about consuming gives it such a bad reputation? German philosopher Albert Borgmann proposes a potential window into the complex world of consumerism. He introduces a concept called paradigmatic consumption. Borgmann believes that our idea of consumerism is flawed. He explains in his article, The Moral Complexion of Consumption, that paradigmatic consumption is like materialism. He writes, quote, "Paradigmatic consumption attenuates human engagement with reality. Our technology has replaced us for how our ancestors saw, understood, and interacted with the world around us. Before the invention of the internet, or computers, exploring the world required time, money, travel, and commitment. Now, sites like Instagram supply an algorithmically curated glossary of people living happy, adventurous, and carefree lives. That's not to say technology is inherently bad. Borgmann applauds the drive for invention and the quality of life it promises. The printing press allowed the widespread use and circulation of books. Refrigeration preserved food for longer periods of time. But something changed. Technology shifted from simple and usable to complicated but easy to use. it became smaller and more difficult for the average person to understand. How many of us today can describe the exact process a video goes through from a server on the cloud to your computer? Technologies no longer were tools, they became commodified, sold as luxury. Borgman goes on to say, paradigmatic consumption degrades the symmetry of humanity and reality. This decline is still hidden from us because it comes in the guise of liberation from labor and discomfort. He goes on, liberty takes the form of disburdenment, and prosperity the form of limitless availability of consumer goods. Most of the population used to be farmers, supplying food for their families and neighbors. Nowadays, the list of easily accessible items has grown even larger. Large strip malls carry hundreds of stores and shops holding anything from food to electronic devices to clothing and everything in between. Amazon sells about everything on the largest internet marketplace. Trucks, trains, and airplanes have made the transport of consumer goods ridiculously fast. Television, streaming platforms, and social media make easy entertainment cheap and expansive. It makes you wonder, where exactly did all this excess come from? It is easy for us to look back and think that life has always been this way. History tells us that this is simply not the case. Australian economic historian Karen Higgs explains this well in her book Collision Course. She says, quote, "There was little economic motive for increased consumption among people before the 20th century. Quite the reverse, frugality and thrift were appropriate to situations where survival rations were not guaranteed. The Industrial Revolution set off a domino effect of one excess after another. Advances in technology and scientific understanding allowed people to understand and use their environment to greater effect. Fertilizers improved the rapid growth of food crops. Refrigeration preserved food far better than any method before. Trains and the automobile could move this food at ever-increasing speeds, reaching more people. This trend continued at an exponential rate." As Higgs writes, U.S. production was more than 12 times greater in 1920 than in 1860, while the population over the same period had increased by only a factor of 3. Corporations expanded to valuations in the millions. The poor had access to more food, the middle class was on the rise. New discoveries paved the way for efficient metallurgy, resulting in higher quality iron and steel, or electricity to power complicated machinery. The survival needs of the American public were beginning to be realized. A small group of people began to grow concerned at the untempered growth. Economists and business titans met to address what they viewed as a developing crisis. They asked themselves, what happens when everybody has everything? They quickly realized they would eventually run out of people to sell to. Soon everybody would have their own car, refrigerator, or radio. With no one to sell to, profits and economic expansion would halt. In their panic, they scrambled to find a solution. Higgs quotes historian Frederick Allen, "Business had learned as never before the importance of the ultimate consumer. Unless he could be persuaded to buy, and buy lavishly, the whole stream of consumer goods would be dammed up at its outlets." Industrialization created the rapid production of consumer goods. Companies made fortunes selling cheap, mass-produced products to a hungry audience. Now, as that audience filled up, companies switched gears to encouraging or even outright demanding they continue to consume more. The decade was labeled the Roaring Twenties. Jazz and swing dancing took the nation by storm. Cars, refrigerators, the radio, and more fell into the hands of the individual homeowner. Electricity, only reaching 30% of the population in 1920, skyrocketed to 70% in just a decade. People saw the budding prosperity and wanted it in. Banks were more than happy to loan. A committee under Herbert Hoover boldly claimed they foresaw, quote, "a boundless field before us." Higgs described it as a stairway to heaven, to progressively ascend to what were once the luxuries of the affluent. Inevitably, the bubble had to pop. Paradigmatic consumption created the illusion of infinite money. A deluded population and economic leaders alike bought on speculation and chance. This mistake led to the suffering of millions. The market would not recover for another 20 years. The 1950s saw a resurgence in the consumer economy. This time, it was propped up by a war economy from World War II and regulation implemented in the 30s. Advertising was brought to an even greater level. They started using new mediums like newspapers, pamphlets, leaflets, radio, highway billboards, or even the recently invented television. Companies posted their logos everywhere. Buildings, packaging, and rental spaces became popular places to advertise. PR firms developed strategies to give the customer an emotional attachment to their product. This infatuation with acquiring material goods has followed us into the modern era. Driving down the highway, you are bombarded with rows upon rows of billboards, and every commercial building has a logo or two on it. Social media uses sleek user interfaces and algorithms to bring your eye to growing lists of advertisements and product placements. You can play a game by yourself. Try looking around the room you're currently in. How many logos can you spot without moving? What about the movies you watch? Does the super spy drive an Audi or BMW through the exploding building? Does the main character drink Pepsi or Coca-Cola? This video itself, while not sponsored, has also served as free advertising for every company mentioned or shown. The constant demand for our attention is pervasive and intense, and its consequences are starting to show. In February 2023, a new trend surfaced on the social media platform TikTok called de-influencing. Influencers took to the trending page denouncing various companies and products for a variety of reasons, from corporate practices to simply saying their opinion. The trend hit beauty product reviews the hardest. While there's nothing wrong with giving your opinion about a given product, the reason behind why needs to be examined. The so-called influencer community had been under pressure the past couple of years for being dishonest and misleading. Viewers began to feel that sponsored product reviews encouraged or even demanded content creators to lie about a particular product to produce sales. Creators reacted by openly denouncing mainstream brands to recreate a sense of trust between themselves and their audience. The problem is, many creators would switch to a new off-brand product, further muddying the waters for young, impressionable viewers looking to find a quality product and perpetuating the problem even further. The scope of the issue can seem overwhelming. Many issues today seem bigger than one person. Change is difficult and often terrifying, but there needs to be a starting point. Someone first needs to be the change they want to see. We must ask ourselves, what can I do? What steps can I take to improve my life for the future? We first need to look inward. We need to understand how aware we are of the problem. How aware are you that your choices really are your own? Do you know if your decision is completely your own? Paradigmatic consumption uses key parts of our brain to make decisions, both good and bad, on our behalf. The first step is educating ourselves on our situation in our world of consumption. We then need to understand the problems this is causing in each of our own lives. Advertisers have created an unhealthy relationship between themselves and their consumers. They demand people buy their product, doing their hardest to convince them that this thing has value in their life, while reducing that product's quality for the sake of a growing bottom line. Algorithms online promote a dangerous addiction to endless scrolling, parasocial relationships, and outrage content. Companies have sacrificed the health and well-being of their audience and consumers. We, as consumers, need to take back control over what brings value to our lives. We need to understand that it is not somebody else's job to say what brings us value. Our family, friends, and personal health are all so crucial to our well-being. Albert Borgman proposes a few solutions to disconnect ourselves and learn what truly makes our own life worth living. He recommends we turn our attention to objects and tasks which we can focus on or towards. These focal practices can be any number of health-promoting activities. We can create art through playing an instrument, drawing, or sculpting. We can perfect a skill like skateboarding or set goals to do like running a marathon. We can socialize with one another face-to-face or take a walk through nature. We can reserve time for our personal sacred spaces, be it meditation, religion, family, or friends. This video does not intend to say the things we own are inherently bad. It is up to every single one of us to decide what we need to do in our own lives. Many conveniences and technologies, like fresh drinkable water, were invented to improve the quality of life for all people. Digital devices have allowed for wide-scale communication and global interaction. Our material goods can supply value to our lives and can function as the tools of today to build a cleaner, healthier future. but we need to be careful and understand that one tool cannot replace everything in our lives.